It was guys lost ears, nose took off their face, eyes knocked out their head. I'm talking about both sides. This was blacks and whites. I mean, it was really bad. So that one little fight between a skinhead and a brother led to one of the biggest race riots in Jefferson City, Missouri history. Okay, how's everybody doing? Prince on the Rise is back. Listen, before I get started, my mother had white friends. I mean, very close white friends. Became like family to us. My father, best friend, was white. We called him Rabbit. Super cool dude. So I grew up not being prejudiced. I grew up not having a prejudice bone in my body. So let me get to why I'm talking about this. Because in '96, when I found out my mother had breast cancer and she was struggling with it, I talked to the ward, Miss Teresa Thornburg at Mobley Penitentiary. And I had been doing really, really good at this time, you know. I hadn't been getting no trouble or nothing. So I wasn't sure my mother, you know, if I could just see her before she died. And so I went to talk to her. I wrote her a letter, had a friend of mine, because this time I can't read or write. And this was in '96. And so I'm trying to get a point across to her when she walked the yard, but she would never stop and talk to me. So I had a friend of mine to write her a letter. And she wrote her a letter because I wanted to talk to her and see her, you know. And let me tell you something about the administration before I get off track. If you're not a rat, somebody that they know would give them information about stuff that goes on in the yard, they're not quick to respond to your letters or want to see you. They do not. If you catch them in the child hall sometimes, you know, and you want to embrace them with your problems, they'll listen to you, but it'll go in one ear out the other. So I took a chance on having a friend of mine, you know, Papa Smurf we called him because he looked like one of the Smurfs. He had a white beard. He was a good guy. So I had him to write the letter to Miss Thornburg so I can talk to her about my mother, if I could get a bedside visit or not. And so once I talked to her, and she was like, yes. Say, yes, Stanley, yes. Just let us know when, have your family to call me, contact me and everything. So my family contacted her and called her and everything, and they set it up to where I could have a bedside visit, you know, to see my mother before she died. I didn't know my mother had died. And so a fight had occurred in the unit. A guy got stabbed. So they came and got me and my brother. Me and my brother, may he rest in peace. We were cellies at the time. So they came and locked us up, saying I had something to do with it, you know, with this stabbing that happened on the yard. You know, most of y'all that was there at Mobley at that time know I'm telling the truth about this. So anyway, we in the hole, and I'm trying to figure out what we in the hole for. We ain't do nothing. And the captain come to our cell and tell us that my mother had died. So Miss Thornburg had come to find out that she had knew that my mother had died and had went against her word and given me a bedside visit. So they give me the phone and I call my sister. She tell me everything. So now they're going to let my brother back out on the yard, but they're going to transfer me because she figured now my wild side is finna come out. I'm finna start doing crazy stuff on the yard because I had that type of reputation. You know, I would really act a fool. I really would act a fool. So I get sent back to the walls, Jefferson City. You know, so I get sent there. And so I got all this anger in me. You know, now I'm not liking nobody at this point. You know, took me away from my brother. I was doing good. Me and my brother was cellies. You know, I hadn't seen my brother in years. So when he get in trouble, come to prison, now I get to be with my brother. So you taking that away from me at the time my mother just died. You know what I mean? And it was like, so I had all this anger in me. So when I get to Jefferson City, when I get back to the walls, I hadn't been there in years. When I get back there, at this time they had this group of guys called themselves the skinheads. You know, they're a very racist group of white guys. Every white guy, so when the white guys come in, they recruiting them. every white guy got to cut his hair and become a skinhead. If you don't, they'll put him off to the blacks, and so the blacks can rape them. But what these kids didn't know, they was raping them. You know, if you don't go out and stab a black guy, you know what I'm saying, you lose your manhood. People talk about blacks raping guys in prison, white kids and black kids, but you never hear about how the white guys rape kids too when they come in. They raping them, setting them up, you know, getting them in drug debts, you know, with guys in the yard with drugs and stuff, you know, and raping them too. And so when the skinhead movement came about back then in the 90s, when they come in, they was recruiting. So if a white guy want to keep his manhood, they'll tell him, if you don't want him, we don't want us to throw you to the blacks, you know what I'm saying? You need to start getting money in, you know what I'm saying, or something. They'll use him like a girl. You know, you got to go out there and stab a brother. You don't want them, you know, that ain't the word they use, but you got to go stab one. You got to put in some work. And that's what they would do. So these white guys had recruited this white guy to do something to a brother, and I found out about it. And I didn't know why. Everybody heard about the fight and everything, but I didn't know why it had happened. When I found out the reason why it had happened, I snapped. Because now I got all this pent-up anger in me about Miss Thornburg, who was a white lady, didn't let me go see my mother before she died. You know, and so I'm hot. I'm really angry. And so a riot kick off. It was a racial riot. And I mean, people got stabbed, gunshots went off from the towers. I mean, it went crazy back there. I mean, it went really, really crazy. But instead of them owning up to the fact that they allowed this stuff to happen, they blamed me and another guy to say we kicked off the riot and made it a racial riot. Instead of saying we got tired of what they was allowing the white guys to do in prison. They would get away with a lot of stuff. So racism, if you done time in prison, you know, you've seen a lot of favoritism by white staff members with white inmates. The things white inmates could get away with, we couldn't get away with. Unless we was a rat, you know, gave them work for the administration, we would get certain favors. You know, even jobs, get good jobs in prison, you had to have those connects, those ties, you know what I mean? And so it was so that riot was dangerous. I mean, it was bad. It really was bad. And I lived with that for a long time. Even when they sent me to Potosi, where all death row inmates is at and stuff. It's the next worst prison, lockdown prison in the state of Missouri. So they sent a lot of us to Potosi. And when you go in Potosi, it's crazy. But anyway, I want to talk about that riot to let people know that when you're in prison, it takes just this much anger from somebody to blow up this big. And innocent people, guys that's just trying to do their time and go home back to their families, you know, they become a victim. Anybody can get it. Anybody. And I hated that. I hated that because I knew the reason why I even fed in, because I'm not racist, I'm not prejudiced at all. I have great white friends, even in prison. If you look at my page, you'll see I have a lot of white friends. That's not Stanley, but at that time I was so angry, you know what I'm saying, at this system and then this racist group, how the administration allowed them to run the yard and do what they was doing, you know, putting all these racist tattoos on their bodies, you know, white pride. They used to have this stuff, white pride writ on the back of their arms, you know, they'll walk around, you know, with their shirts off, you know, and you can see all this hate on their bodies and stuff, you know, and we took that. Brothers was feeling really offended by all this because you don't see brothers walking around the yard, you know what I'm saying, with all this racist stuff on us against white people, you know. But they was letting these guys walk around prison with all these white racist tattoos on their bodies, pictures of dudes hanging with ropes around their neck, you know, and that's what they done to black guys back in the day. So, you know, we got to see this stuff. And so when the opportunity presented, you know what I'm saying, for us to get even and go at this evil that was being presented in prison, you know, we took to it. And that's what happened. That's why the riot really happened. It wasn't about the fight. It was just for years us having to live with this stuff, seeing this stuff every day. So that one little fight between a skinhead and a brother led to one of the biggest race riots in Jefferson City, Missouri history. Look it up and you'll find out that it was true. People got shot from the towers. It was bad. And I still blame the administration for that riot. It never should have happened. But they allowed it to happen by the way they was letting guys walk around and present all this hate. They was presenting so much hate towards blacks. So it was bound to happen. I still believe they wanted it to happen. You know, they really, I think the whole thing was set up for that to happen. And it did. You know, a lot of people got hurt. I mean, seriously hurt. I've never seen, still to this day, so much blood on a yard. I never heard so much hollering from pain to this day than I heard that day in Jefferson City, Missouri. It was bad, y'all. It was really bad. You know, so many people got hurt, and I asked God for forgiveness for years about that riot, because it wasn't about us, it wasn't about them. You know, it was the administration. We was all set up. We was set up. And I talk about it. A lot of my homeboys that was there at the time, you know, we still talk about it. I run into a lot of them, and we talk about that because it should never have happened, you know. And I always think about the mothers and the fathers that had to come and find out about their son losing an ear. It was guys lost ears, nose took off their face, eyes knocked out their head. I'm talking about both sides. This was blacks and whites. I mean, it was really bad. You know, people got stabbed real bad. I don't think no one died. I didn't hear if someone died or not, but people got really, really hurt bad. Broke legs, ankles trying to run to get away from stuff. You know what I mean? Getting cornered off in a tunnel. You know, Jefferson City had this big, long tunnel, you know, and you had to go through the tunnel to get to the child hall and stuff. So, you know, commissary. And so guys were trying to run through that tunnel and get away. And they was getting trapped. It was so bad. You know, so it's just be this lit stuff. You know how people just let stuff happen and nobody talks about this stuff, and you wonder why a lot of guys come out of prison and their mind be all over the place. You know, they be messed up, you know, because of what they had to witness in prison. You know, and I still hear guys holler. I was telling my manager that, you know, sometimes, you know, especially before I took my medication, got on the PTSD medication, you know, I could still hear these voices. I had to come and share this because it's just been so heavy in my spirits, and I've yet to hear anybody talk about it. You know, and this happened from 1998, you know, Jefferson City, the walls. And once again, as I said on my recently podcast show, I am so glad, and I could never thank God enough for tearing that prison down. That was a very, very evil place. It was really evil. It really was, and I thank God I survived. And speaking of me surviving, you know, a guy asked me a couple of weeks ago about how did I survive? Never let my guards down. And with that, keep your guards up. Don't be too easy to trust nobody. And always know you got to be careful in what you say and what you do. What you think is little can be big to somebody else. And it can cause you a lot of pain. With that, I love you. God bless. Prince on the Rise. Say peace.